They laughed at us, and that was their first mistake. Not because the laughter hurt our pride, and not because humanity had never been mocked before, but because they laughed without understanding what they were looking at. The galactic assembly had existed for over 12,000 standard cycles. Empires had risen and fallen beneath its observation. Entire species had been uplifted, categorized, ranked, and placed into neat little hierarchies of relevance. When Earth finally stepped into the interstellar stage, we were just another entry in their archive. A young species from a volatile world with a documented obsession for war. They studied our broadcasts, our history, our conflicts, and they reduced us to a summary: aggressive, unstable, emotionally reactive. To them, humanity was not a threat. We were a case study. First contact had been peaceful. A silver crescent-shaped vessel appeared beyond Pluto's orbit, transmitting mathematical primes and spectral greetings. Humanity responded with caution, but also wonder. Within a year, formal relations were established. Within 5, we were invited to observe the assembly. That invitation alone was celebrated across Earth as proof that we had finally matured beyond our violent adolescence. Our ambassador stood in a chamber carved from luminous crystal, surrounded by beings whose civilizations predated our written language. He spoke of cooperation, shared growth, and mutual defense. The assembly listened politely. Then they began their evaluation. They projected our wars across the chamber walls as if presenting evidence in a trial. World War footage, nuclear detonations, urban combat, political assassinations. They did not show the reconstruction, the treaties, the scientific revolutions born from desperation. They showed the blood and called it identity. A senior counselor, a being whose species had never experienced planetary war, declared that humanity's evolutionary reliance on conflict made us culturally unpredictable. Laughter rippled softly across the tiers. Not cruel laughter, dismissive laughter, the kind reserved for children who believe they belong at the adults' table. Earth was granted associate status, permission to trade, to learn, to participate. In minor debates, but no voting authority on matters of galactic security. We accepted it publicly with gratitude. Privately, the decision divided us. Some argued that respect would come with time. Others warned that a hierarchy established early rarely dissolves later. Still, humanity chose patience. We had, after all, centuries of experience navigating global politics. We understood that influence was often earned quietly. For 2 decades, Earth became one of the Assembly's most reliable contributors. Our engineers improved inefficient drive systems the older species had long stopped optimizing. Our medical researchers adapted alien treatments for cross-species compatibility. Our diplomats volunteered for volatile border negotiations others preferred to avoid. We did not posture. We did not threaten. We built trust. Yet even as our economic value rose, our political standing remained unchanged. In security briefings, human recommendations were frequently labeled as overly cautious or excessively militarized. When piracy increased along the Perseid trade corridor, Earth submitted a detailed predictive model outlining the probability of a coordinated raid. The Assembly majority dismissed it as projection bias, an example, they said, of humanity expecting violence because violence was our default lens. The leak came months later. A closed-session recording from a Dominion senator surfaced on interstellar networks. Humans are tactically creative but strategically immature, the senator stated. Their history proves they escalate under pressure. Grant them equal authority, and they will destabilize the balance we have maintained for millennia. The clip circulated across Earth within hours. People watched it in silence. Not anger, not outrage. Just a slow, collective recognition that no matter what we contributed, we would always be viewed through the lens of our worst chapters. Then, the Dominion fleet entered our territory. Officially, it was a privately funded security expedition investigating resource claims in the outer Sol mining belt. Unofficially, it was a probe. Their ships crossed into our jurisdiction, broadcasting legal citations and veiled threats. They demanded oversight authority over human-operated extraction sites, citing regional stability concerns. Earth appealed to the Assembly for mediation. The response was procedural delay. Committees were formed, clarifications requested. No fleet was dispatched. The Dominion expected diplomatic hesitation. They expected internal disagreement among Earth's nations. They expected above all fear. What they encountered instead was silence. Civilian traffic rerouted, mining platforms evacuated, communication arrays narrowed to encrypted bands. The Dominion commanders interpreted the quiet as uncertainty. They advanced deeper. The first cruiser vanished near the Kuiper perimeter. No explosion. No distress signal. It simply dropped from their tactical grid. Moments later, a kinetic impact struck their rearmost destroyer with such force that its shields collapsed instantly. Human rail platforms, long embedded within drifting, rock masses, had been waiting in passive mode for years. The Dominion recalibrated, raising full-spectrum defenses. That was when the second phase initiated. Autonomous drone swarms, small and individually insignificant, flooded their sensor range. Each drone carried minimal payload, just enough to force shield modulation. Every shield adjustment transmitted data. Every defensive fluctuation was mapped in real time by Earth's combat AI. The Dominion fired back with plasma lances capable of carving through moons. They destroyed hundreds of drones. It did not matter. The swarm was not designed to win. It was designed to learn. Within minutes, our rail platforms adjusted frequency timing to exploit micro-interval gaps between shield harmonics. Impacts multiplied. Dominion formation cohesion faltered. They attempted retreat. Pre-calculated gravity distortions from concealed lunar installations disrupted their jump vectors. Escape routes narrowed into predictable corridors. Human strike vessels, built for endurance rather than spectacle, intercepted with ruthless efficiency. There were no dramatic speeches transmitted across open channels, only clipped confirmations and synchronized maneuvers across Earth's unified command structure. Nations that once competed fiercely now operated as a single organism. 6 hours after the Dominion crossed into Sol, their fleet was neutralized. The Assembly's emergency session convened before debris had fully cooled. Dominion representatives claimed the engagement was a misunderstanding exacerbated by human aggression. Earth responded by transmitting unedited combat logs, including the Dominion's initial demand for surrender under threat of force. Silence spread across the chamber. For the first time, the narrative was not about humanity's violent past. It was about our controlled response. But Earth did not stop at defense. Intelligence recovered from Dominion wreckage confirmed Senate-level authorization of the expedition. It had never been a rogue action. It was sanctioned testing, an attempt to provoke the very overreaction they accused us of being prone to. Instead, they had revealed something else, that the Assembly's balance of power relied on the assumption that younger species would remain subordinate. Human fleets mobilized within days, not toward civilian worlds, but toward Dominion military infrastructure. Shipyards were disabled with precision strikes targeting propulsion cores. Communications arrays were infiltrated with adaptive code that induced recursive system paralysis. Supply depots were seized and cataloged rather than destroyed. Every action carried a message. We could dismantle your war machine without harming your population. We chose not to escalate further. Dominion admirals attempted counteroffensives. Each maneuver encountered layered contingencies. Humanity's long history of asymmetric warfare had cultivated a doctrine built on redundancy and adaptability. Where Dominion strategy prized overwhelming initial dominance, human strategy anticipated failure points and built fallback pathways. Within 3 weeks, the Dominion's operational capacity was reduced by 80%. The assembly reconvened under conditions none of its elder members had experienced. A junior species had not only defended itself, but had executed a counterstrike that reframed the political landscape. The same counselor who once labeled humanity unstable now requested immediate negotiations. Our ambassador returned to the chamber without ceremony. "We did not seek this conflict," he stated calmly, "but we will not accept condescension, disguised as guidance." He projected imagery of intact Dominion cities, functioning hospitals, untouched agricultural domes. "We targeted capability, not civilians, because we understand the cost of total war. We have lived it." The Dominion Senate formally surrendered strategic authority over its border fleets and accepted reparations. Earth's demands were measured but transformative: equal council status, autonomous defense recognition, and a charter amendment prohibiting species classification based solely on historical conflict metrics. The vote was contentious. It passed. From that day forward, when humanity spoke within the assembly, no one laughed. Not because they feared annihilation, but because they understood something they had previously ignored. Violence was not humanity's identity. It was our teacher. Every scar on our history had carved lessons into our collective consciousness, about escalation, about restraint, about survival. We had nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. The fact that we had not was the most important detail they failed to analyze. Years later, analysts across dozens of systems would conclude that the Dominion crisis marked a pivot point in galactic politics. Power was no longer measured solely by age or technological elegance. It was measured by resilience and adaptive capacity. Humanity embodied both. We did not conquer territory. We did not impose cultural doctrine. We demanded parity, and we proved we could enforce it. The galaxy had mistaken our diplomacy for weakness and our culture for softness. They believed that because we cherished art, music, and open debate, we had outgrown our teeth. What they learned instead was that civilization is not the absence of force. It is the mastery of it. So when the galaxy mocked humanity, they were not witnessing arrogance. They were witnessing miscalculation. And when we answered with fire, it was not rage that guided us. It was memory. The memory of every war that taught us what must never happen again. The memory of every reconstruction that proved survival was possible. We are not the oldest species among the stars. We are not the most physically formidable, but we are the species that stared into the abyss of self-destruction and stepped back. And any civilization capable of surviving itself is not one to underestimate. And if this story reminded you why humanity should never be underestimated, then make sure you support the channel. Like the video, subscribe, and join us for more epic HFY stories where courage, resilience, and fire shape the fate of the galaxy. Because out here among the stars, humanity's story is only just beginning.